Have you ever seen the unfortunate scenario of someone who is bedridden to his hospital bed, and it seems to be that his chances of survival are bleak? The doctors don't give him much of a chance. Most people have given up, and suddenly you find that he sits up in his bed, might even get out of his bed, take a walk, speak, and act like things are getting better, and a new turn of hope occurs. He received a second win, and Baruch Hashem, things are looking in a better direction. And suddenly, out of nowhere, everything starts collapsing. All the systems starts disappearing, and finally, within a couple days, he's no longer with us anymore. How does such a thing happen? How could such a thing occur? So the truth is, there is a Kabbalistic idea that is also mentioned in the Kli Yakar in the end of Parshat Shmot, that's known as Lifnei Shever Gaon. Before something is destroyed, before something reaches its termination, before something ends, before it reaches its climax towards the finale, it is able to reach a tremendously high state that it was not familiar with. A person is able to reach his capabilities beyond the capabilities that he knew he even had. He has a tremendous amount of overabundance of strength that goes beyond his strength, such as the story I just said. That's Lifnei Shever, before downfall, Gaon. He has a tremendous amount of strength. Therefore, we find Lamashal in Alot HaShachar, right in the beginning of dawn, when the day is beginning. It is the darkest part of the night that starts before it. Before a lamp, a menorah, a lamp turns out, especially the incandescent ones, we know there's a big poof that lets it out, a big a breath of light, tremendous amount of light, and suddenly the light extinguishes, and suddenly it disappears. It's not around anymore. And specifically, and this is what the Kli Yakar is talking about, that's what happened with Paro. We know over there with Paro, Nirpim, he got upset at us and he overdid the burden and he gave us an extra amount of work, double the amount of work that we were used to. He went and pushed himself over the bounds, and as a result of that, Paro eventually met his dreadful fate that he deserved so well. But because he went ahead and overdid himself, because he did that push, because it was finally the time for him to be finished, so that extra push happened beforehand, which is known as Lifnei Shever Gaon. And that's, of course, an event that we also saw similar 80 years ago that happened with the big Rasha in Germany, that he went ahead and he overexploded, he overdid himself. He was doing unbelievable. The amount of territory he was conquering, all of Europe was in his hands, and nobody was willing to go ahead and fight against him. He had the incredible blitzkrieg that he was able to go ahead and conquer country after country to be able to completely take over. And Russia wasn't so far beyond, but he overdid it. He was too fast he was too trigger happy, and he went too quick, and he overdid himself. And that's the idea again, because the Malach that had to do with Germany of the time knew that the time is over and it was coming to an end, and therefore suddenly a burst of energy, of strength came out, and he was trying to spread himself out also into Russia, and as a result of that, that led to his Baruch Hashem eventual demise that happened as a result of that. Haman could have killed Mordechai. That's what he was upset about, and here he is going ahead and destroying all the Jews. What do you want with all the Jews? Leave them alone. It wasn't their fault. So you're upset at Mordechai, take care of him. Not only that, when he goes ahead and decides to give him the guillotine, he has to develop one that's 50 amot tall, has to be over 10 stories tall. Has to be a massive building that was never seen before. And that Gufa, that itself was the point of his destruction. That itself put him in the guillotine. That itself got him hanged up on that tree in place of Mordechai. His overdoing it caused his own personal destruction. The best example of this is, I remember very clearly when I was young, that I used to enjoy having those soap balloons. I'm sure we're all familiar with it, with those soap wands that used to do. And then recently they came out with one of those, if it was electrical or it was just a bigger wand, big genius, they came out with a bigger wand that was able to make bigger bubbles, and it was so exciting to be able to see these colorful big balloons, these big bubbles that were flying all over the place. The only problem is I noticed that they terminated much quicker. The life expectancy of these bubbles were not as long as the smaller bubbles, which I was also used to, and it kind of was very disappointing, because till you finally got excited about the bubble, suddenly, boof, it disappeared. And what's the reason? Because of its growth, because it grows so big, so it was much quicker to pop. A balloon is great and it looks exciting and it gives a nice happy birthday appearance. But if you blow too much, it's overdone and you can't overextend yourself. That's what happens. You might not know, but your mazel knows when the time is up. And therefore you'll find some of these phenomenons that will occur. And here we are experiencing that experience right now. Because Iran, the Ayatollah power that was existent until now for 50 years, the one who was conquering many of the countries here, Syria, Lebanon, the Hamas who are sitting there in Gaza, the Taimanim, he's spreading his tentacles to all over the Middle East and also to Iraq, eventually got to. Those evil tentacles that were spreading was working slowly but surely. And he had a very big stronghold in this empire, using all his money for one and only desire to destroy Israel, to get rid of him, mamash like Haman, mamash like Hitler, to be able to go ahead. He had one thing in mind, one gesture in mind, to make sure this country gets abolished. But he overdid himself. He overstepped his boundaries. Lifnei shever gaon. He had a tremendous amount of gaon. He went ahead and overdid himself. All the October 7th occurrence that happened a year ago, we all know that this was the man behind the mask. He was using other people as a shluchim, just like Hitler never actually killed one physical person. It was always everybody else that did his evil shlichiyot, his evil endowments and evil messaging that he did. And that's exactly what happened with this Iranian evil figure doing the same exact thing. And here he is, by spreading himself out, much too bad. October 7th was the most dreadful, disastrous day that happened in this country and since the beginning of the Medina, because even in the war that happened in Yom Kippur, it took itself over a month or 2 or 3 months. It took a certain amount of period of time for those 2,500 people to die. And here we lost 12 to 1,300 people, all in a matter of 12, 13 hours. That's what occurred, and that's one of the most dreadful occurrences that happened over here. And I don't have to go through with all the missiles that was unprecedented and unbeknownst to mankind ever, to send such a large amount of ballistic missiles with such an enormous amount in such a small amount of time to such a small country. To do such a thing was unknowns to any other country that has ever done such a thing. And they went out of their perspective. But the Kadosh Baruch Hu said, it's all over for you, buddy. When we go ahead and put down Hamas and Hezbollah, so now, because they became maimed, they now became handicapped, so there's no one to back up the Syrian regime, so suddenly they found their demise. Suddenly they found that they have nowhere else to survive. And that's why it came only about other people. We didn't have to do anything. But the domino effect is occurring, and it's happening one after the other. Iran is left over to be exposed for anyone to take advantage of them, and we all know the next step is going from cutting off the tentacles to going to the head of the octopus, to going straight to the source of all the problems that have occurred until now. They have no more power, and their power is becoming completely usurped, and they have realized that their end is not far beyond. Besides the fact, Baruch Hashem, the guy's dying. Seder, his son, who's not as intelligent, is following suit, but at least we see that the steps, the domino effect is actually taking place. Now listen to two interesting Mekorot. The Yalkut Shimoni brings in Yeshaya, in Tav Tzaditet, it brings that Melech Mashiach will be Niglabo, Kol Malchei Umutalat, all the Malchei Umutalat will be fighting one with the other at the time. And he brings that the main one will be Melech Paras, the Melech of Iran, that will be Midgareb Melech Aravi, that will go against another fellow Arab, another Arab country, until they find themselves in Melech Aram, until Melech Aravi le'Aram. It will go into the state of Aram. Aram, of course, is Syria, and that's the place that will be the point of disaster right before the time of Biat Mashiach, as is brought in the Breshit Rabbah and Lamed Zayin also. It says the Milchama Atidah will be in Goymer, Eshkenaz, Rifa, Tuguma, and Garinka. And it says the Pirushim over there in the Aruch says that Garinka is Syria. Syria will be amongst the pawns in the puzzle of Chevlei Mashiach, in the direction of the destruction of piece by piece of the final destruction that will happen to this regime. And of course, Syria was the trachea. That was the neck of Iran. All his life being came through there. He was able to transfer everything he wanted to all directions. Every type of weapon to Lebanon and to everywhere else went through Syria, because it was very hard to do it by flight, because Israel usually catch that. So he always did it by the means of the borders of Syria, which made them a very fundamental piece in this evil puzzle. Al Kopanim, listen to a Ortza Midrashim in Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, which I heard quoted, and I looked it up over here. It brings, of course, this famous Midrash, which is brought Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, many nistaret, things that were the Malach told Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, Kishaya Chavui b'Ma'ara, Mipnei Keser Melech Adam, when he was hiding in the Me'ara, he came to him, the Malach, and told him that you should know, after the regime of Edom came to Ram Malchut Yishmael, will come the Malchut of Yishmael, will take over. And Reb Shimon Bar Yochai was very disappointed. He said, Lo dayenu Mashar Al-Asad Al-Dum, it's not enough. All the Holocaust that we received from Edom and from the Rishayim in the west, and now suddenly we have to deal with the east and the Malchut of Yishmael. Miyadena Memtet, the great Malach that's known as Matat, answered him, Ve'amar lo, al tira ben adam, she'ena Kodesh Baruch Hu mevi Malchut Yishmael, ele kedei l'shechem ezot arisha. Don't worry, this Malchut of Yishmael will actually end up being to your benefit. You know why? Because he says they're going to fight one with the other. B'yichbosh lahem et haaretz, navi kiritzono, ubayim hem, b'yicheskel b'gedula, ve'eva gdola tiyeh b'neim. They will have hatred amongst each other. There are Shiites and Sunnis and all the ones who hate one another. And Mamela, as amongst the hate that happens within one another, that will be actually a certain benefit for you. There was a Tsar that came to Rav Chaim Volozhiner, and he asked Rav Chaim Volozhiner, who was in Volozhin at the time, one of the czars that came to him, and he asked him, what do you guys think for yourself? We have millions of soldiers, we are a very powerful army, there are many strong countries in this world, and you're telling me this Mashiach guy is going to walk on a donkey here and take over the world? Do you have are you okay? Well, you should be put in a hospital. How can you think that something like that is actually going to occur? How is he going to be able to conquer so many countries? So Rav Chaim Volozhiner reported to him a story that he one time was witness to, that he said there was a lul shel tarnagolim, a hen house, that inside of it was 100 roosters. There were 100 roosters inside of this hen house, and then lo and behold, somehow a poor misken, a poor unfortunate isolated hen walked in to this rooster house. So it's full of roosters, and she realized that it's all over for her. There's no way. There's just too many of them. I'm going to be finished here. My life is over. It's time to say Shema Yisrael. There's no way she's going to be able to get out of this one. There's too many of them. And suddenly, incredibly, one of the roosters started pecking at the one next to him and said, "Don't you dare! This is my hen," and the next one to him, and the next one to him. The whole cage was a place of rage and fury, of afachema. That they went in there, and one killed the other. In the end of the day, the only one that was left alive was the cute little hen that was sitting there. A keves echad surrounded by shivim ze'evim. One sheep that's surrounded by the 70 wolves, but the 70 wolves, he said, are busy picking at each other and killing each other one after the other, and don't worry, we're going to be the ones that come out on top. History reveals itself. Rav Chaim Volozhiner's Nevuah, who was a Talmud of the Vilna Gaon himself, proved that everything is so true. Because as the Yetzer Hara works, it makes a lot of itself, but when it gets bigger and bigger, and it gives itself a very strong influence, it looks real, but we all know it's all imagery. It's all a hologram. It's one big charlatan. The real Hevel Havalim that lies behind it is when you get closer to it, it grows so big until itself explodes. When we talk about the Shechita of the Yetzer Hara, of the whole entire evilness that is surrounded in our country, in our world, then that evil itself takes care of itself. It gets so large that it gets destroyed. If you look at Roman history, and one of the big questions that happens is, what happened to the incredible, powerful Roman army? And the answer is, they imploded. They were so caught up in themselves, so caught up in their own lustful and individual desires. They were so caught up in themselves that the ziyuf, the whole forgery, the whole fakeness that was behind it, all came to the forefront, and they self-destructed. That's right. So every one of these incredible empires end up self-destructing, and here it is, the last one is on his way, and the Kodesh Baruch Hu did the job for us. It's a tshuva in Rav Moshe Feinstein, by the way, in Dalet Pei Aleph, where he actually, over there he's talking about wearing weapons on Shabbat, but he does bring from the psukim that have to do in Yecheskel and Yeshua, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu fought their fights, and he said, who says that in the time of Mashiach, Hashem Yitbarach, remember Drachim Shalom, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will take care of them. If it means things falling from the skies, rocks, or one fighting with the other, or Moshe Feinstein brings down the Esh. He says that really it could be we're not even going to need any weapons. The Kodesh Baruch Hu will really take care of the fight for us. And like we said, we see history being Megala itself in front of our eyes. We've seen this incredible how Kodesh Baruch Hu, Hashem Yilachem Lechem V'atem Tachrishon. As long as we're quiet, we have our people in the Beit Midrash, we know that's who's taking care of us, and we try our best. We do our ishtadlut, but then after that, the Kodesh Baruch Hu is the one who's going to make the final punch and who's going to be able to take care of us. I'll end with the last words over here in this Oitz Midrashim. An interesting thing over here when it brings about, it goes through in detail what was told to Reb Shimon Yochai about this Mashiach coming around. It says like this: V'zeh lecha le'ot k'sheta ro'eh shenafal Niron Mizrachi shebed Damascus. Damascus is in Syria. But when you see Niron Mizrachi fall, Malchut b'nei Mizrach, v'az tismach ha'yeshua liYisrael Mashiach ben David ba v'Yerushalayim, then you should know when Niron Mizrachi in Damascus falls, so then you should know the Yeshua will come to Israel. The gematria of Niron Mizrachi is 571, and the gematria of the leader over there in Syria, who was a very bad leader, he was an evil one, he was under the Iranian regime, is Bashar Al-Asad, which equals with the koilel, including the two names that he says, also 571. So it comes out that this Niron Mizrachi, who's in Damascus over here, Baruch Hashem, he's been thrown out and spit out of there and thrown into Russia, which is also a piece in the puzzle here. As Tidmeh Yeshua Yisrael uMashiach ben David ba v'yalu Yeshua. But the main part of all of this is to know that it all comes as Yeshua Hashem Kerifayim. When a Kodesh Baruch Hu does it, it takes care of itself. They kill each other, they take care of themselves. If it means Avadim falling from the skies, but in the end of the day, Mashiach ben David is on his way. We could be, I know we say this many times in different occurrences, but the pieces are just too connected, one to the next step. Everything is here. We see that the pieces of the puzzle are falling in place, and Bezrat Hashem, Kodesh Baruch Hu should give us a Yeshua Hashem Keheref Ayin.